I used to think betrayal would arrive like a siren loud, undeniable, a red light slashing through the dark. What I learned is that it often starts as a whisper and a scent, a phone set face down on the table, a new perfume just for work, silence that knows your name. My name is Aaron Wright. I'm 35 now, but this story started when I was 20 and thought devotion was a full-time job you could hold just by wanting it enough. I grew up in Houston, where summers stick to your skin and Sundays smell like brisket and choir robes. My mother still sings alto in a church that runs on casseroles and forgiveness. My father taught me to wire a breaker panel and keep my mouth shut when people are deciding who they are. That last lesson, I unlearned the hard way. Megan and I met at 19 at a community college biolab, elbow to elbow over plastic pipettes and the world's saddest goldfish. She laughed like a door opening. I fixed a lamp in her apartment and forgot to leave for 6 months. We married young because that's what Hope wanted. She worked front desk at a dental clinic at first, then trained as a dental assistant, good at calming nervous kids, better at reading rubes. I apprenticed, tested, earned my license, and landed at the city's energy metering center, half field, half control room, a brain made of transformers and long spreadsheets of faith. Cole is my younger brother by 3 years, a barber with hands made for precise lines and stories. He always found the right fade and the right joke. He stood best man at my wedding and swayed with grandma to let's stay together while we laughed. He carried the ring in his pocket and the room in his grin. If you had asked me then who I trusted most in the world, I'd have said my wife and my brother and asked you why you were making me choose an order. Houston builds families out of porches. Our first apartment had a balcony the size of a hand towel, but we crammed a grill onto it anyway and burned chicken like sacrificial offerings while we learned. We saved, bought a starter townhome in a complex off I-110 where every garage door dings the same. Saturdays, Megan sat on a folding chair in the shade while I pretended I knew what I was doing with ribs. Sundays, Mom would tug us to church and afterward we'd eat until the tray of green beans looked like a battlefield. Cole came by for haircuts and leftovers. The kind of normal that makes you forget how fragile normal is. The first soft warning wasn't even a sound. It was the phone turning face down on the table. Megan had never cared before, never needed a screen to be a secret. Then one July, she set it down like it contained something that might jump out. I clocked it, then filed it under, "Don't become a jealous man." My father's voice in my head, a man who polices another person's privacy is either proving something or losing something. I told myself I was proving I wasn't my father. That's how denial dresses itself, like virtue. She started wearing a new perfume, not sweet, more metallic and green, like mint cut with a blade. "Trying something for work," she said, shrugging. "A patient's mom reps this brand. She only wore it on days she was scheduled late." My brain tagged the detail and my heart told my brain to mind its own business. The clinic hired a new orthodontist and suddenly, Megan's hours stretched. "He's building a caseload," she said. "We're doing consult nights. Overtime's great. We can finally replace that washer." She'd text me at 9 that she was finishing charts, and then her Instagram would light up at 10:30 with a story that looked a lot like girls' night. A drink sweating on a bar, a shadow of a city skyline, the boil of neon. I drove by the clinic once, a Saturday, when she said, "We're open, just for ortho." The parking lot held 2 cars and a stray cot. Inside, dark. I sat there with my engine off and listened to cicadas grind their teeth. The cat watched me like it knew more than I did. When evidence finally showed up, it arrived as a ledger. Apple Pay doesn't lie, it lives to be believed. I'm the one who set up our family accounts because bills bore Megan into a coma. While reconciling a credit card, I noticed a charge to a motel off I-10, tucked close to a cluster of fast food and a liquor store that always needs repainting. The charge was small, which meant hourly. The line item didn't match any business we use. My stomach did a small, slow turn. I asked no one for advice. I clicked deeper. More charges, same place, staggered across months, little quiet signatures. I checked our shared iCloud storage and saw a backup that didn't belong to any current device name, just Megan's iPhone old. I didn't open it then. I closed the laptop, rinsed my plate, and went to the garage to check an extension cord that didn't need checking. Cole was already there, sitting on the tailgate of his truck eating takeout, legs swinging like a kid's. "Yo," he grinned, greasy bag raised in salute. "You look like a man about to fight an appliance." "What do you know about the Riverside Motel?" I asked, gentle as I could. He snorted. "On I-10? Only that it's where married people go to ruin things. Why?" "Seen you there?" I asked. He smirked like I'd told a joke he'd heard. "Man, that place is nasty. You better not be slumming it when I could line you up a date with a towel that doesn't smell like yesterday." "Not funny," I said. He waggled his eyebrows and changed the subject so fast the air got dizzy. "You see that Astros game? I swear the bullpen is trying to get me killed." His eyes didn't linger on mine. He chewed, he joked, he left a grease circle on the tailgate that looked like a question mark. I cleaned it off with a rag and told myself I was being weird. When you work in energy, you learn to trust logs more than feelings. Feelings spike. Logs don't care. I bought a Ring camera and mounted it in our apartment corridor, pointed toward the elevator. "Packages have gone missing," I told Megan, and that was true. Our complex had a porch pirate problem. I synced the camera to my phone and set the notifications to chew through my sleep. Here's the thing about truth. It doesn't mind light. What happened next stood it under a bulb. At 11:48 p.m. on a Thursday, Megan had told me was extra tray sterilization night. My phone buzzed. Motion detected. I thumbed the alert and watched a circle of hallway appear. Cole stepped out of the elevator holding a takeout bag and a paper sack like wine hides shame. He looked into the camera and didn't see it. Too high, too subtle. He moved down the hall toward our door. My heart did that thing where it feels like it misses steps because the stairs changed count. At 11,049, second buzz, the elevator doors opened again. Megan. Hair up, work scrubs, the green perfume running ahead of her like a rumor even through the screen. At 11,049 and 32 seconds, my phone lit with a text from her. Don't wait up, babe. Late, late. Love you. A screenshot is a kind of signature, so I took one. I watched their backs disappear toward our apartment and felt something inside me not break but rewire. Rage didn't land the way it does in movies. What landed was cold and organized. I stepped out onto the balcony and stared at the sodium orange of the parking lot. I waited 5 minutes. I walked back in like a man who lives in his own life. The couch became a witness. I sat on it, silent, with my phone on the coffee table face up. The key twisted. They came in not careful enough. Cole's voice low, Megan's laugh strangled small. The smell of that perfume waved in like a flag. Cole stopped first, saw me. The takeout bag swung like a metronome. Hey man, he said, too bright, you're up. Apparently, I said. Megan's face did a math she couldn't solve. Aaron, I want to put the wine on the counter, I asked. Then we can decide what kind of people we are. Silence sat down with us. Cole cleared his throat and went to the kitchen the way you approach a wild animal. Megan set her purse on the hook like muscle memory could reverse the tape. Who installed the camera? She asked. I did, I said. That's controlling, she said too quickly, like she practiced the line in other rooms. Packages have been stolen, I said, and nodded toward the hallway feed on my phone, and truth can handle light. We sat at the table. I asked for the truth. Megan told me a story where the protagonist was misunderstood and the villain was the absence of adequate appreciation. She said I worked too much. She said I'd started living at the center rather than at home. She said Cole had been there for her when I was soldering and scheduling and being my father's son. You're controlling, she said. You always have to know. You make lists because you can't trust. I make lists because electricity kills sloppy men, I said, and because life is long if you refuse to write anything down. She turned to Cole and then back to me. Nothing happened, she said, and the sentence fell apart under the weight. Truth can handle light, I said again, because sometimes the only way to keep yourself from shouting is to repeat a line that doesn't allow shouting. If what you're telling is truth, let's put it in a room with the facts. I printed the Apple Pay ledger. I slid it across. Megan's eyes flickered. Cole's jaw tightened. I opened the Ring app and replayed the 30 seconds of hallway. They watched themselves like strangers. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I took the laptop and the phones and backed up everything that knew our story. I exported old iCloud backups to a drive and labeled it with a strip of blue tape and the date. I placed it on a shelf where I keep things I don't want to lose. Megan cried then. Not a storm, a disappointed drizzle. You're like your father, she said. He watches everyone and then pretends it's care. My father would have kicked both of you into the street and slept like a stone, I said. I'm asking for honesty because I don't want to hate anyone I've loved. The next day, the mothers arrived like weather. My mother with scripture and casseroles, Megan's with gossip and the unkillable belief that shame is less embarrassing if it happens under one roof. Families don't break, my mother said, hand on my cheek. They bend. Sometimes rot is structure, I said softly, and she flinched like I'd blasphemed. We tried on a plan. Not forgiveness, not yet. Conditions. I proposed 90 days of no contact between Megan and Cole, couples therapy, individual therapy, church, if that meant something to her, and it did. I wrote it out like an electrical procedure. Megan signed it, hand shaking but face defiant. Cole texted me a thumbs up like this was group chat logistics. We didn't tell anyone else in the family the specifics. I didn't want my sister weaponizing it or my uncle turning it into beer talk. We lasted 60 days. It was a Monday when people with normal lives let their guard down. Megan texted at 7:02 p.m., going to the gym. Back by 9. On the Ring camera at 7:34, Cole's face appeared in the hallway, the kind of brazen that believes in luck. He knocked on the neighbor's door first, wrong one, then ours. He stepped inside. My phone buzzed with a parking garage log from my office. Sometimes I checked systems from home to make sure weekend maintenance didn't trip alarms. An odd comfort, machines were honest even if we weren't. At 75:06, I got a text from Megan, push a work request through. Need signatures tomorrow. At 8:10, my sister sent a picture of my niece Cole's goddaughter holding a sparkler on the patio at their place. It was dated last summer. The caption, remember when everything felt easy? The world likes to coordinate its ironies. I printed a packet, screenshots, timestamps, our signed 90-day agreement. I wrote a cover letter that wasn't angry, just clear. The next morning, I called a mediator. Her voice sounded like the part of a storm where you realize your roof holds. I emailed her the packet and asked for the first available slot. I told Megan that night over tacos at the counter because ordinary food keeps people from running. This is punishment, she said. No, I said, calm, because anger would have felt like a habit. This is consequence. I told you my boundary. You crossed it. I'm not confiscating your freedom. I'm closing access to me. Cole and I spoke one more time in person because I decided we had to. Parking lot, late afternoon, the Houston heat bouncing off the pavement like an argument that won't stop. He leaned against his truck and gave me a speech that I'm sure sounded noble inside his head. I didn't mean for this to happen, he said. I fell in love. You were always working. She needed someone. People in love manage not to lie to the person who taught them to throw a baseball, I said. He spread his hands. We're all human. No, I said. We're all responsible. He swallowed and tried again. I can't undo it. Good, I said. Then you can't pretend it's undone. You're really gonna blow up your life over this, he said, genuinely baffled, like he'd found a button on my chest he expected to be programmed for forgiveness. My life is not a balloon you're holding, I said. You don't get to name what happens next. He laughed once without humor. You think this makes you better than me? No, I said. It makes me done. He said the kind of thing cowards say when faced with a line they didn't expect you to keep. I didn't memorize it. I memorized my own sentence instead. I am not confiscating freedom. I am closing access to me. We did the divorce in mediation. No courtroom drama, no performative apologies, no cousins piling onto Facebook like a jury made of fireworks. We split what we could split, sold the townhome to an oil exec who said the porch was cute, and divvied weekends like cards. I took an apartment in a complex with oak trees that looked like they remember the 1970s. I bought a couch that didn't know my old weight. I hung a shelf exactly level and lined up my blue tape drives like soldiers who'd seen things and still saluted. The family tried its best to twist me back. Mom cried. Dad nodded the way men nod when they wish the world would stop being stupid. My mother-in-law told anyone who would listen that I'd thrown away a perfectly good woman because I was proud. I kept my mouth shut at church. I passed the potatoes. I learned to cook eggs the way I like instead of the way we agreed on in 2017 because that had seemed fair. I slept better than I thought a man could ever sleep after he's seen his life from the outside. Time did what time does when you hand it a clear list. New job responsibilities, same center, more field work, fewer nights replaying a hallway clip. I trained a new tech who told me I had an engineer's patience and I pretended that was who I'd always been. Megan kept the clinic, then left for another one. Cole cut hair in a shop that specialized in cuts crisp enough to convince men they were forgiven by mirrors. I said little. The city kept on humming. The Astros broke our hearts like it was their job. 6 years can pass in a blink if you keep your eyes on the floor you're wiring and not on the ceiling you're missing. In year 6, late summer, the night air heavy and close, I woke at 3:03 a.m. to my phone lighting up my dark room, an email. The subject line was one word, brother. I stared at it a full minute. I listened to the window unit rattle, I let my heart do whatever it insisted on doing, and then I opened it. Aaron, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I have to say it anyway because carrying it has made me into a man I don't want to die as. I loved her. I know what you'll say about what love is. You're right. I did it anyway. She's gone now. It didn't work and I can't even be mad because I broke the thing I used to measure working. I'm sorry. I was jealous of you for so long I convinced myself I wasn't. You had certainty and I had charm, and certainty is louder in the long run. Mom says I should write you. She doesn't know half of it. Maybe you'll send this back. Maybe you'll print it and burn it. I deserve both. I don't know how to say that I wish I'd been your brother more than I wished I was the most interesting person in a room. I wish I'd learned your patience. I wish I'd left my hands off what wasn't mine. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. If not, I understand. I'll be here anyway. Cole. The word sat there like a man at my table, hat in hand, waiting. I read it twice. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel angry. I felt like someone who had already built a dam and was listening to water hit it with a soft sound. I put the phone down, poured water, took a walk between oak shadows until the sky started to decide itself. When I got back, I pulled a notebook from the drawer where I keep receipts and the warranty for a toaster I will never need. I wrote a letter I didn't plan to send. Cole, truth survives light, so I'm writing this in daylight. I can love who you were to me and not let who you chose to be back into my house. You're not wrong about certainty. I didn't have it then. I have it now. I can be a brother at a distance. I can also be a man who never invites the past in for coffee again. You call this cruelty. I call it consequence. You're not a hazard I'm punishing. You're a hazard I'm choosing not to stand next to. I don't confuse the two anymore. Oh, be well, be honest, be away. Aaron. I copied the letter again, in a second-hand printed words, not cursive. I folded that copy and tucked it into an envelope without an address. I took it downstairs to the communal grill at the apartment pavilion, the one I've contributed more foil to than rent. The night was still thick. The grill's metal lid was cool under my palms. I lit the burners and listened to the click-click whoomph I'd learned to trust. I set the letter on the grate and watched the edges go first, then the center, then the part where I'd written his name. It curled and blackened and fell into itself. The ink bubbled like it wanted to say more. I let it talk to fire instead. People believe closure is a door slamming. For me, it was ash settling and sprinklers ticking on somewhere beyond the fence. I cleaned the grill the way you do when no one taught you to leave a mess for someone else. I walked upstairs and slept with both windows open, which in Houston means you're ready to sweat for something you want. I didn't reply to his email. I printed it, put it in a folder labeled 6 years later, and placed it on the same shelf as the blue tape drives. I made coffee and took it to the porch. The sun came up over a parking lot full of cars belonging to people I'll never know. Someone somewhere was deciding whether to tell the truth today. Someone else was deciding whether to leave. I didn't need to watch either. Here is what I know, finally. Truth can handle light. Love doesn't make you blind, it makes you brave enough to see the thing and still call it by its name. Boundaries are not revenge, they're sanitation. I can love you and not unlock my door. I can pray for you and not pick up when you call at 3 in the morning. I can forgive the boy I grew up with and refuse the man he became. These are not contradictions. These are building codes for a life that doesn't collapse. Sometimes my mother still says, "You two were so close." I smile and tell her closeness without trust is just proximity. She sighs and asks about my work and whether I'm eating enough. I tell her about a meter array that wouldn't sync and a guy we hired who can glance at a panel and tell if it's 2 degrees off level. I tell her the brisket place off 18th finally figured out their smoke. She smiles and says, "You sound good." I am. Not joyful every day, not healed like the commercials promise. Good like a system that isn't shorting anymore. On certain mornings, I drive past the river and the city looks like a promise I can keep. I park under an oak and walk past men in uniforms that smell like work and women in scrubs that smell like mercy. I carry a lunch I made myself, the exact sandwich I like, no compromises, no agreements from 2017 stapled to it. I hum a hymn I don't entirely believe in. I nod at the guy from janitorial who remembers everybody's birthday. I flip on the light at my station and think about how electricity and love are both just energy looking for a path that won't burn the house down. Would I do anything differently? Maybe I would have asked for truth sooner. Maybe not. Maybe you only become the person who asks for truth after you've been lied to by people you'd have handed your last clean shirt. Maybe the point is less about when you ask and more about what you do when the answer arrives. If you're in the part of your life where the perfume changed and the phone turned face down and you don't know whether you're a paranoid man or a man paying attention, here's what I can say. Truth doesn't mind light. Bring a light. If the person next to you calls that controlling, notice who benefits from darkness. Write your plans down, label them. Dates and times are harder to argue with than tears. If you choose consequence, don't pretend it's punishment. If you choose to stay, don't call it love unless the truth could stand in it and breathe. I can love and not let back in. I can live in a city where heat clings and still find mornings that feel like a cool hand to the forehead. I can miss what I thought I had and be grateful for what I built in the wreckage. I can say no and have it sound like a prayer. I can accept an apology without offering a key. If that sounds harsh, you haven't learned yet how polite resentment becomes when you give it a couch. Truth survives light. I am not confiscating freedom, I am closing access to me. Some people will call that cruel, I call it clean. What about you? If a letter woke you at 3 in the morning with a confession 6 years late, would you answer it? Would you meet in a diner and measure remorse against pancakes? Or would you write your answer, read it out loud to yourself, and give it to the kind of fire that knows exactly what to do with paper? Tell me where your line is and why. If this story helped you find the words you needed or burn the words you didn't, drop your take in the comments, hit like and subscribe. The next one's already loading in the queue.